Every year, thousands of veterans qualify for full 100% VA disability compensation and never actually apply for it, not because they don't deserve it, but because almost nobody explains how this particular benefit works. If you or someone you love served and has a service-connected disability rating below 100%, this video could genuinely change your financial picture. By the end, you'll understand exactly who qualifies for this often missed benefit, the two most common reasons veterans get denied, and one overlooked detail in the final section that trips up even veterans who've been rated for decades. The benefit we're talking about today is called TDIU, Total Disability Based on Individual Unemployability. Here's the plain English version. The VA doesn't only pay full 100% compensation to veterans who have a combined scheduler rating of 100%. If your service-connected disabilities prevent you from holding down what the VA calls substantially gainful employment, you can be paid at the full 100% rate, even if your official rating is 70%, 80%, or 90%. That's the part almost nobody tells veterans clearly. A lot of folks assume the number on their rating letter is the ceiling. The first is called Scheduler TDIU. You typically need at least one service-connected disability rated 60% or higher, or two or more disabilities where one is rated at least 40% and your combined rating reaches 70% or more. The second path is Extra Scheduler TDIU, for veterans who don't quite hit those percentage thresholds, but can still prove their service-connected conditions keep them from working. That second path is harder, and it requires more documentation, but it exists, and a lot of veterans assume that if they don't meet the percentage math, they're automatically disqualified. That's simply not true. Picture a retired Army veteran, rated 70% for a combination of a back injury and PTSD. He's been living on that rating for 15 years, assuming that's just what he's entitled to. What he doesn't realize is that his conditions have gotten progressively worse to the point where he hasn't been able to hold steady work in years. He's leaving money on the table every single month because nobody ever told him TDIU existed. This happens far more often than you'd think, especially among veterans who separated decades ago, before the VA's current outreach and claims processes existed. TDIU is not the same thing as Social Security disability. The VA and the Social Security Administration use completely different standards, different applications, and different definitions of disability. You can be approved for one and denied for the other, and that doesn't mean either agency made a mistake. They're simply evaluating different criteria. Veterans sometimes assume that because Social Security denied them, the VA automatically will too. That's not how it works, and I want to make sure that's crystal clear before we go any further. Before we continue, if you're finding this helpful, go ahead and hit that like button and consider subscribing. This channel is all about helping veterans and retirees understand the benefits they've actually earned, without the confusion and without the runaround. All right, let's keep going, because there's a documentation piece coming up that catches even veterans who've filed VA claims before. When it comes to actually applying, the form you're looking for is VA Form 21-8940, the Veterans Application for Increased Compensation Based on Unemployability. This is where a lot of claims fall apart, not because the veteran doesn't qualify, but because the paperwork doesn't tell the full story. The VA wants specifics: your work history for the past few years, why you had to leave previous jobs, and how your service-connected conditions specifically interfered with your ability to perform that work. Vague statements like "I can't work anymore" rarely carry enough weight on their own. What actually moves the needle is detail: dates, employer names, reasons for job loss, and ideally a statement from a former employer or supervisor confirming performance issues tied to your condition. Medical evidence matters just as much. A private doctor or your VA physician writing a clear opinion connecting your inability to work directly to your service-connected disabilities can make or break a claim. This is often where veterans get denied the first time around, not because they don't qualify, but because the initial application simply didn't include strong enough supporting evidence. If your first TDIU claim gets denied, that is not necessarily the end of the road. Many veterans successfully win on appeal once they add stronger vocational or medical evidence the first submission was missing. Veterans sometimes wait years to apply for TDIU because they assume they need to hit a certain age first or that it's only for veterans who are fully retired. That's not accurate. TDIU has nothing to do with your age or your Social Security retirement status. It's entirely about whether your service-connected disabilities prevent substantial gainful employment, whether you're 45 or 75. I've seen veterans in their 60s assume they missed the window simply because they'd already stopped working for unrelated reasons, when in reality their service-connected conditions were the actual barrier all along. TDIU generally pays at the same monthly rate as a 100% scheduler disability rating. For a veteran with no dependents, that's a meaningful jump compared to a 70 or 80% rating, and if you have a spouse or dependent children, the amount increases further. I won't quote exact dollar figures here because VA compensation rates are adjusted periodically, and the current numbers are always listed on the VA's official benefits rate tables. I'd encourage you to check those directly rather than rely on numbers you might see floating around online, since those can go stale fast. If you're approved for TDIU, in many cases you're treated the same as a veteran with a 100% scheduler rating for the purpose of certain additional benefits. That can include eligibility for CHAMFA healthcare coverage for your spouse and dependents, and in many states, eligibility for property tax exemptions specifically reserved for 100% disabled veterans. Property tax rules vary significantly from state to state, so this isn't automatic everywhere, and you'll want to check with your state's Veterans Affairs Office or county assessor. But the point stands, TDIU can open doors well beyond the monthly compensation check itself, and that's the piece almost nobody explains up front. If you're 55 or older, or if you've held a 100% rating, including TDIU, for a certain number of continuous years, the VA generally won't schedule you for future re-examination to reduce your rating. This gives a lot of long-term TDIU recipients real peace of mind, because one of the biggest fears veterans have is the possibility of losing their rating down the road. That protection isn't automatic in every single case, though, and there are exceptions, so if this applies to your situation, it's worth confirming directly with the VA or an accredited Veterans Service Officer, rather than assuming it fits. If there's one action step to take away from everything we've covered today, don't assume your current rating percentage is the final word on what you're entitled to. If your service-connected disabilities are keeping you from steady, reliable work, TDIU may apply to you regardless of your combined rating, your age, or how long ago you separated from service. The best next step isn't to fill out paperwork alone at your kitchen table. It's to sit down with an accredited Veterans Service Officer through organizations like the DAV, VFW, or American Legion at no cost to you. They can review your specific disabilities, your work history, and help you build a claim with the kind of detailed evidence that actually gets approved. So to recap everything we walked through today, TDIU allows veterans to receive full 100% compensation even with a rating below 100%, as long as service-connected disabilities prevent substantial gainful employment. Occasional part-time or marginal income doesn't automatically disqualify you. Strong documentation, both from your work history and your medical providers, is what actually determines whether your claim succeeds. And approval can unlock additional benefits beyond the monthly payment itself, from healthcare coverage for dependents to potential property tax relief, depending on your state. The single most important thing to remember is that your rating percentage is not necessarily your ceiling if your service-connected conditions are the real reason you can't maintain steady work. If today's video gave you something worth looking into, the most useful thing you can do right now is reach out to an accredited Veterans Service Officer this week and ask directly whether TDIU applies to your specific situation. It costs nothing to ask, and for many veterans, that one conversation ends up making a real difference in their monthly income and their long-term benefits. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.